After the hangman's noose failed to kill the bandit captain, the king ordered the executioner to remove his head. Guards marched him towards the guillotine, where the executioner stood, eagerly awaiting his prize.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Black Magic Craft. This week I'm going to do a little tiny itty bitty project. It's a bit of a pain in the butt and it can be very frustrating, but you can accomplish really detailed small builds with styrofoam. So I built a guillotine. Guillotine? Guillotine. Guillotine is the right word, I think. I hope somebody's gonna roast me no matter what I say. I'm gonna stick with guillotine. Let's build. I approached this project with little to no, actually literally zero planning. I sat down on my HOTWIRE table, envisioned a guillotine in my head, and started breaking down pieces that I think I would need to assemble one. Somewhere in this mess, there's a guillotine. I textured the foam with my wire brush just like I did in my gallows video, and I set about assembling this thing. And I just used a mini to kind of gauge the height of this thing and where certain things would be positioned. I didn't do any measuring whatsoever. I really just improvised this. When assembling very small bits of foam like this, you have to use PVA glue or tacky glue and use some pins to hold it together while that glue tacks up. This is incredibly tedious work and it can be very frustrating, especially if it's your first time working with foam at this small of a scale. But if you stick with it and use pins and some patience, go slow, you will eventually get there. But man, it can be hard. Alright guys, I don't know if this project is going to make it to completion. It is so damn dainty. It is the most finicky little thing I've ever built out of foam. It might just fall apart. It looks good. I like the way it looks. Here's the problem. I've pinned this in place. When you're pinning styrofoam to glue it, you have to be careful. You want the pin to hold it in place while the glue tacks up, but you don't want that pin in place while the glue completely dries. If you do that, there's a chance that the pin will get glued in place, and when you pull it out, it's going to rip a big chunk of foam out. That doesn't matter when you're working on a bigger piece, a little chunk of styrofoam, but this thing is so small that if it rips out a chunk, it's just going to destroy the whole piece. So I'm gonna pull these pins out now and hope that they don't do any damage, and also hope that it doesn't just fall apart in the process. So wish me luck. The problem is I can't grab any of these. Like there's nowhere safe to grab this stuff. Yeah, see, this pin is already kind of glued. With a lot of caution, I was able to successfully remove all the pins without doing any damage, and I could then add on the last remaining little wood bits that I wanted to put on earlier but couldn't because this thing was too delicate to work with. I knew that it wasn't going to hold up long term though. I figured this thing should go on a base. This would make sure that those bottom pieces never broke off, and it would give something stable to grab onto when using this in game. I set to work putting the Mod Podge on this, and I was still keeping it separate from the base because I wanted to be able to paint everything, so I had to be really careful here doing this. So the Mod Podge is dry. These little pieces I had here didn't even make it through the Mod Podging procedure. They just fell off and I said, screw it, I don't need them. But I just went and I grabbed this and I broke it. So it snapped in half. This bit of glue released here. That's a bummer. Once it's attached to this base, it'll be fine, right? So too stubborn to quit and throw in the towel, I set to work repairing all of the damage. I was dead set on seeing this project through to completion. I had hope. I had faith. Anxious to get this thing attached to the base so that it could finally be more secure and stable, I got to work painting this, and I used the same technique that I did in my gallows video, which was using this baby poop golden brown color, really watered down, and then a dry brushing using a light tan. And if you missed that last episode, this gives the wood that really natural silvery gray weathered look that you just don't get from brown. While the glue was drying on those two pieces, I started to think about the bucket. You know, the bucket that would catch the head of the decapitated person? I was really not in the mood to build it myself. I was about done with building very, very tiny things for the moment, so I turned to something pre-made, and I had just gotten this MANTIC terrain crate. It's the town crate. This is not the same one I reviewed, it's a different one that I got, and it's full of random stuff. I figured there's probably a bucket in here I can use, and lo and behold, there was. So I grabbed that and I was super lazy. I attached it to a pin and a cork so that I could paint this without manhandling the whole thing, and I painted it out using a different brown color than I did on the guillotine because I wanted to have some distinction between the two different types of wood. I then started to think about the blade, and to make this I used chipboard. The nice thing about this stuff is that you can bevel the edge so you can actually make it look like a beveled blade. This is a little bit tricky to get a consistent bevel on the thing, so instead of cutting out the shape first and then trying to bevel that, I beveled a large area of this piece and found a section that looked right. Then I could just hold it up behind the frame of this guillotine at the right angle and trace out the cut. I then cut it out with an X-ACTO knife and was able to start painting it. I did a base coat in a medium gray and then a coating of a metallic silver, and I did a light dry brushing with a very bright silver metallic on the edge of the blade and lightly across the whole surface to try to give it some texture. Then using a little bit of super glue, I glued the blade in place. I wanted some hardware for the rope to string through, so I grabbed these little metal hoops that I have. These are just things that I found in the jewelry section of Michael's. They are super handy and you can do all sorts of things with them. I pinned one into place at the top of the blade, and I also put one on the underside of the top piece of timber. This would give me a place to tie the rope to and also to thread it through on the top and make this thing look somewhat believable. I also took a little piece of toothpick and glued it to the side of the framing to give a place to tie the rope to later. Using that same metallic paint that I used on the blade, I painted out that little toothpick as well as the metal loops. Okay, crisis averted. I gotta admit, I was pretty close to throwing in the towel on this one. I thought it would be far too flimsy and delicate and just continue to break, but I stuck with it, and now that it's on this base, this thing is pretty solid. I'm happy with it. It's looking really neat with the details of the blade and the hooks and whatnot, so I just gotta put the wash on this and then deal with the rope. So I used my usual dark brown blackish wash and coated the whole thing, and this is where it started to pop. My favorite part, the wash makes everything look amazing. And then for the rope, I used the same string that I used in the gallows video, and I poked a hole through the side timber of the guillotine so that I could feed the string through, and then I looped it through the two eyelets and tied it off on the bottom one. This was a little bit tricky and awkward, but eventually it worked. Using super glue, I ran the string down the side of the guillotine. The super glue held it in place, and then I wrapped it around that little metallic piece that I put there, again locking it in with some super glue, and then I coiled it up on the bottom platform by where the bucket would go. And again, just use some super glue to lock it in place. The super glue actually acted as a bizarre sort of wash. I don't know if it was pulling out some of the color from the wash, but it dirtied up the rope and it made it look a little bit cooler actually. After that, I took my little bucket that I had pre-painted and I super glued that in place. I left that little pin that was in the bottom of it and used that to poke it into the base of the guillotine, making it extra strong. Of course, this project would not be complete without some blood. I wanted this thing to look like it had been used. So I took some dark red paint and I thinned it down using Pledge Future Floor Polish. This works as a really easy, quick glazing wash. I wanted this to look thin, so I brushed some of that on where the person would be decapitated. And then I did the most fun part of this whole build, which was using the old paint spray technique, just like a little kid with a toothbrush, put some paint on the brush and flick it towards the blade. I channeled my inner Dexter to get appropriate blood splatter. Well, it's probably not appropriate, but it looks really cool. Then the only thing left to do was to clear coat this thing. So I took it outside and I sprayed it with my Kryolan crystal clear matte varnish to seal the deal and lock everything in place and protect it for years to come. I've been editing this video for about 10 hours straight, and before I finish, I want to address two things that I know are going to come up in the comment section. The first is, why didn't I make this guillotine functional? Mostly because I think it'd be a waste of time. It's really not necessary for gameplay. This is just a space holder, a visual aid. It doesn't need to work. If you want to make a functioning one, awesome. I'm not interested. Don't need it for the game. The second thing is, why the hell did I choose to make such a delicate thing out of foam? Surely it would be much better to build this out of wood, like balsa wood or matchsticks or something. Absolutely. It would definitely be better to make something like this out of wood. But where's the fun in that? Where's the challenge? But I know it would be smarter to make it out of wood. Anyways, on with the glamour shots. I like the way this thing turned out. It was an exercise in patience and a lesson on sticking with something even when it seems like it's a disaster. It is worth it to see a project through to completion. If you need to pick up any tools or supplies to tackle your next build, head over to blackmagiccraft.ca. There I have my essential equipment store where I link to all of the things that I use and recommend. Purchasing through those links gives me a small commission for Amazon, and that helps fund these videos. The other way you can help fund these videos is by supporting Black Magic Craft on Patreon. It's the support from the people on there that allow me to make these videos each and every week and dedicate so much time to doing them. Because trust me, these videos take a lot of time to make. That's it for this week, guys. I hope you found this video informative and entertaining and most of all, inspiring. Hopefully it motivates you to try your hand at doing a more itsy bitsy, more delicate foam project. See how far you can push the material. If you like this video, hit that like button and let me know in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Hopefully you hit subscribe. If you haven't, hit subscribe and the bell thingy. I put out build videos every single Friday, sometimes some other videos as extra as well, but cool tutorial videos every single Friday. And that's it for this one. So I will see you guys again next time. Cheers.